lenses of today are pretty much perfect. Even the cheapest lens can create incredible images. Take this 50mm 1.8 from Sony. It's cheap, it feels like plastic, and yet it handles harsh light environment well, it has autofocus, and the color reproduction is pretty accurate. The average person wouldn't be able to see the difference between this 50mm and a higher end version, especially if they're looking at the phones. But this almost clinical perfection does have an effect on the feel and the look the lenses reproduce. Which is why I lately been interested in vintage lenses. The Helios 44M is an old Russian vintage lens from 1980. It's actually older than I am. It was made to copy the look from the Zeiss lenses that were popular at the time. It is different. It has manual focus, no autofocus, manual aperture, no fancy button, and it needs an adapter to even work with my camera. And yet, there is something about this lens that makes it special and makes me consider trying it out and working with it just because I want my footage to look special. Finally got this lens, or I have had the Helios for quite a while, but I recently got the adapter for it, which means I can finally test it out. And I'm planning to go out with one of my friends called Lense and test out the lens. Hopefully it's gonna be good. So I went out shooting with Lense. Now we planned to do it Wednesday, but unfortunately there was so much rain that we decided not to do it. Mostly because the lens doesn't have weather sealing and Lense kind of don't want to jump in the rain. Makes sense. Fortunately for this video, and for me, I woke up at 4 AM, he couldn't sleep, and he contacted me about him being awake and that he was bored, and I told him he can come to the city, we can go out, there's no rain right now, there's gonna be sunrise, we can shoot something cool. He came by and we started shooting. And it was pretty fun. We did a lot of unexpected things as we didn't have a plan in place, and I got to test a lot of the features out. And let's start with some of the features or disadvantages of the lens. First things first, this lens is fully manual focus. For someone like me who has been working with autofocusing lenses from the beginning, this lens really made me reconsider how to shoot and also what I can capture, what I can't. It also made me think about the way I framed, because if I put myself in a weird position, it would be hard to manual focus. But if I put myself in a way where the subject is going to be on the same line, I could constantly keep the same area of focus and make it easier for myself. And in the beginning, it was really problematic to get the manual focus, especially because Lense, he's a very spontaneous person, so out of the blue he's gonna do a flip and I won't capture it because I wasn't ready. Autofocus lenses make it easy, this one made it a bit harder. But as I shot more and more with it over the day, I got more and more used to it, and in general it was actually a pretty good experience. But I think one of my favorite things from this lens was actually the look from it, and the flaring and the bokeh and all that. If you're shooting towards like a harsh light source, it can look really sick. Those flares look so powerful and so, if I can use an overused term, cinematic. The flaring from this lens just looks really amazing. With that said, that flaring also comes with a con, which is called ghosting. If too much harsh light hits the lens, it's gonna start washing out. I have had a lot of instances where the lens actually kind of became really hazy, kind of this ghosty look, which is kind of a con, but also it's what you get. Like the new modern lenses we have, they don't have that much ghosting, but they don't have this high quality flares either. I think my favorite thing from this lens, and also the reason I even bought it, was the swirly bokeh. It looks amazing when you get it, but it takes time to figure out where you can get the bokeh. I think most of the time trees, like tree branches, are gonna be the best way to get that swirly bokeh. And outside of the bokeh, you also get this kind of really interesting look. It's hard to describe, but it feels more organic, I guess organic, than a lens like the one I'm having on right now, the 24mm 1.4 G Master, which looks really sharp, but doesn't have the same look as the Helios. Okay, now something that I didn't expect with this lens, and I never even thought about it, and I'm not sure if it's the adapter itself or the lens production. So while I was shooting, I came across a kind of a weird thing. I found this kind of wobbly thingy in my images. It might be the adapter itself, but it could also be the lens itself. And it might have been my specific model, it might be just the lens in general. But from what I can see, there's a bit of this wobbly in the edges, which is really not that good. Positive, if you use some warp stabilization, it often can fix that issue completely, but it's something to keep in mind, or at least I have to keep in mind next time I'm shooting. After all the positive, negative about this lens, what is gonna happen with it? I own this lens and it's going to stay in my camera bag for now. So the Helios is my first vintage lens. It's special. I won't use it for every project because it's not created for every project. But I can see potential in it, in using it in kind of more dreamy environment, more vintage or retro looks. Or even if I just want to get a really creative or just out of this world look. Out of this world, that sounds fun. But it's a lens that I'm probably going to be using for some of my more interesting B-roll. Or if I want to go on something like a Hugo shoot, going out for fun and testing it out. And I know some clients want it to be more, not clinical, but more clean. And this lens isn't always that. And also because of the wobble, the ghosting and all that, I am kind of uncertain about using it for every project. But it does have a place in my camera kit. Because it does have this special look, and I can imagine a lot of projects that actually could benefit from this really sick look. I can't wait for a project where it's gonna shine. And with all that said, I really would love to hear your opinions on it. Like, have you tried a vintage lens on your camera before? If so, please tell me, because I really want to look at more vintage lenses to add to my collection. Maybe they could be better, maybe they're worse, but just I want to learn more. But see you next week.